Hello, welcome to the Hot L Poets series and our reading today featuring Peter Kline and Greg Williamson. My name is Stefan Reichert. I'm one of the hosts of the reading series. I'm also the editor of the poetry magazine Smartish Pace. The Hot L reading series is now in its second year, and we are co-sponsored by Smartish Pace as well as the Baltimore Poets Theater. Under normal circumstances, you would be able to attend our readings on the second Sunday of each month at the Bird in Hand Cafe and Bookstore here in Baltimore. But for now, of course, we're on a bit of a break. We look forward to returning to Bird in Hand as soon as we can, and we thank Emma Snyder and Emma Miller for all their good work at Bird in Hand with hosting our readings. So this reading with Peter and Greg was originally scheduled for May 23rd when Peter was on a book tour, or was going to be on a book tour of the US on the East Coast. There's been other readings that we've missed as well. We missed, of course, our June reading and our normal July reading. So those poets will be rescheduled for a future reading, or maybe it'll be online like this one. So you can look forward to readings from Dora Malik, Joseph Harrison, Amy Woolard, Christopher Condrich, and Elizabeth Hazen here in the not too distant future. So Peter and Greg are two poets who we've had the good fortune of publishing through the years in Smartish Pace. It's been an honor to publish their work, and it's been gratifying and enjoyable to watch their progress as poets through the years. It's especially nice to have both of them reading for us here today. I was first introduced to Greg Williamson's work through my friend, the poet Joyce Brown. About 20 years ago, she gave me his work to read, and I've been reading him ever since. In fact, I was looking at my Smartish Pace notes, and Greg Williamson read for us. The last time he read for us was 18 years ago. It was November 7th, 2002. He read for us in the Smartish Pace series along with Joyce Brown at the Contemporary Museum here in Baltimore. So it's nice after all these years to have Greg reading for us again. During this break from the in-person readings, I've really missed seeing all of you. I know David and Clare have too, and we miss you. We miss enjoying the readings together. Hopefully this will suffice for now, and when things are better, we look forward to the in-person readings again at Bird in Hand. With that said, it's a pleasure to introduce Peter reading from San Francisco and Greg reading from Baltimore. Enjoy the reading.
Hi, friends of Smartish Pace and the Hot L Poetry Series. I'm Clare Banks in Baltimore, and I'm thrilled to introduce Peter Kline today. Peter is the author of two poetry collections, Mirror Forms from Parlor Press and Free Verse Editions, and Deviants from Austin State University Press. Peter Kline is a former Wallace Stegner Fellow and a James Merrill House and Amy Clampett House resident. He teaches at the University of San Francisco and with the Stanford University's Master of Liberal Arts program. His poetry has appeared in Plowshares Poetry, Smartish Pace, Tin House, and many other journals. He's also been in the Best New Poets series, Verse Daily, and the Random House anthology of Metrical Poetry. Since 2012, he's directed the San Francisco literary meeting series called Bizarre Writer's Salon. So please welcome Peter Kline, and thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's Peter Kline, and I will be reading poems from my newest collection of poetry called Mirror Forms. Before I start, I want to thank Stefan Reichert and everyone at Smartish Pace for all their hard work in putting this together, and also my fellow reader, Greg Williamson. It's a great pleasure reading with Greg, in large part because his work has been so influential to me, particularly in writing this book of mine. So yeah, such a pleasure. As I said, the book is called Mirror Forms. The idea behind the book is to basically coax out all of the different possibilities, musical and expressive, of a form that I invented that I call the mirror form. Its most prominent feature is that its first and last line is the same. It's quite a short form, just 8 lines, and I think you'll hear the rest of the features as I go. So without any further ado, I will begin. These first poems I'm going to be reading are all psalms. So I think of them as prayers and arguments and requests for a divine figure that the speaker wants to believe in, but can't quite bring himself to do so. And so these are the mirror form psalms. Since I'm not mine to keep, who is my true owner? Am I just one more goner, playing house from sleep to sleep? I have 2 stoops to sweep, one east, one west exposure. I'm tidying toward foreclosure, since I'm not mine to keep. How can I be true when you keep vanishing? I get one verse to sing. Who do I sing it to? I've learned to look for you in the blur of ringing strings. You could be anything. How can I be true? I'm learning how to ask, to serve the way you listen. This silence is a lesson. My manner has been brusque. Forgive me. At the risk of losing your affection, I question my instructions. I'm learning how to ask. Maker of patterns and shapes. Calligraphist of the spine of the serpent. You define the vine as a line and the grape as a prison the wine must escape. Engineer, by your design, we break down at 69. Maker of patterns and shapes. Does it have to be just me? Can't someone else come too? I belong to no one. You who made what it is to be, estrange yourself from me by being undying. Who can I give this living to if it has to be just me? Think of me as your stray bullet, ceasefire twitch, whose ricochet won't scratch a name from a list or pay a blood debt. Runaway heir to the whole shebang, alias the prancling. Think of me as your stray. For you, I'd strip down bare. But won't you give me cover? Dallying with forever is a high-risk affair. I've tried new underwear to tempt a tempted lover, made my whole wardrobe over. For you, I'd strip down bare. I'll show you you through me. I wonder, will you be pleased? Or sway like a man amazed, his one has become three. Facsimile of thee, but no true duplicate. I was made to fade. Just wait. I'll show you you through me. And these next poems are all called end stops. They're from a section of the book called End Stops. And each of these poems seeks to kind of isolate phrases and lay them alongside other analogous phrases or complementary phrases and try to see what happens when these phrases kind of stack up. So it's a way of investigating language, investigating expressions. This first poem is called Malediction. Get the ditch itch and die. Go Betty by and stay there. Take a header from your high chair. Gobble the big sky pie. Pick out a permanent necktie. Hire the gospel choir. Make like a milk jug. Expire. Get the ditch itch and die. And this poem is called Double Cliche. It takes a phrase and basically imagines two different possibilities for it. So you'll hear that kind of switch over halfway through the poem. Double cliche. Scrubbed up with the same soap. Spit shined with the same rag. Buds from the same dime bag. As twin as tan and taupe. Double duped by the rope-a-dope. Hooked like an Engcheng eel. Two shucked clams at the raw deal. Scrubbed up with the same soap. And this poem is called Cigar Caps. And Cigar Caps is a way of representing the different symptoms of major depression. So this is a poem about the experience of major depression. Cigar Caps. In the livery of winter, dissertating gray, satisfied to die, dangled by the panther, weeping underwater, feeling for the null, glassed off from the soul in the livery of winter. This poem's called Pajamalays. And this is a poem for San Francisco with love and despair. Pajamalays. The destination, brunch. The loving kindness class. The crispered baby face. The Sunday fun day paunch. The house-trained Darwin's finch. The burr mill loneliness. The polyamorous kiss. The desolation brunch. And this last end stop works a little differently. This is just a kind of way of playfully transforming images and language. This is called Funhouse Mirror. The drink, the pill fell in. The dot in kink.com. The ink in the letter bomb. The beard of Ho Chi Minh. The bard of Ho Chi Minh. The prank in the letter bomb. The oink in kink.com. The pool, the drink fell in. And I'm going to read a few poems from the section of the book called Studies. These are basically kind of miniature meditations. And several of these are built around a repeating line that's drawn from another source. This first one starts with a line from the Ernest Hemingway story, The End of Something. The poem's called Conservation. Nothing is ever lost, but missing a long time. Things earn a different name. We learn it at our cost. Hearts crossed and double-crossed. Scar into asterisks. XO at your own risk. Nothing is ever lost. This poem's called Hypnology, the study of sleep. And it's drawn from an Edna St. Vincent Millay poem. The repeating line's drawn from an Edna St. Vincent Millay poem called Passer Mortuus Est. Every bed is narrow presently. Extra space becomes a hiding place lit up with blinking arrows. Whoever your bedfellow, there's only room for one in blackout garrison. Every bed is narrow. And this poem's called Narratology. Before the definitive wink, after the errant hair is finger smoothed and the mirror queried and proved pink, as the antepenultimate drink rhymes with the prior four, and the pips in the dice cup blur before the definitive wink. And this last study is called Radiophysics. It draws its repeating line from a Charles Wright poem called Future Tense, and that's one of Charles Wright's sestets, which is another kind of major influence on this book, and a wonderful book. Radiophysics. The station beyond silence broadcasts in negative. Each agitated wave flatlines into balance. Vowels and consonants whose music moved through time are posted in white frames in the station beyond silence. And I'm going to close with a few poems called votives. And these are mainly elegies of one sort or another. This first poem is called Blue Yonder, and this is a poem for Sidney Blair. Blue Yonder. I can still feel your blue, hard, like the truth is hard. It bruises me. No word I know could soften you. No word can bring you to. On the flatlands of your death, your ripcord smile is myth. I can still feel your blue. This poem is called Field Guide. It's for Robert Parham. A true west-tending soul is only seen at sunset, and then in silhouette. Yet, for this loss of detail, black claw, black throat, black bill, its flight is clear. Sky fatigue identifies a true west-tending soul. And this poem's called Lament. Will it be the sound of powder, of pollen, the smell of whiskey in glasses 3 years empty, the look of the air where you were? If it can't be sent in a letter or kept in a false face drawer, will it soften like a color? Will it be the sound of powder? And this last poem is called Planetary. If only here were there. If only if were, if were is. And where you are and why, and for whose fire you fire were fire underwater, where prayer takes on an atmosphere. If only there were here. Thank you so much.
Happy Sunday. Welcome again to the Hot L virtual series organized by Stephen Reichert, Clare Banks, and myself. We're delighted to have a reading today by Greg Williamson, who is a poet that I've admired for a long time. Greg grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and his first book, The Silent Partner, was published by Storyline Press and won the Nicholas Roerich Prize in 1995. His Errors in the Script was published by Overlook, was a runner-up for the Poets Prize. He's received a Whiting Award, NEA grant, and Academy Award in Literature from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, among other honors. His latest books are The Whole Story of Kirby, the Sneak, and Arlo, the True, which is, how would you describe it? Maybe a children's book for grown-ups or a grown-up book for children. It is one of the wittiest, best crafted bits of light verse that you're likely to come across by a contemporary poet. And then a most marvelous piece of luck preceded that. Another instance in that book of Greg creating an original form, which he had done previously with his double exposures. And most marvelous piece of luck is a kind of sonnet-like form in which the speaker dies and every sonnet comes back to life. And then he's made contributions to the recent Jiggery Pokery Semi-Centennial, which was a tribute to the double dactyl form founded or invented by Anthony Hecht and John Hollander. Look forward to hearing him now. Welcome, Greg Williamson.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Stephen Reichert for the opportunity to speak with y'all today. I'm going to read from my book-length poem called The Whole Story of Kirby the Sneak and Arlo the True, with illustrations by Brian Bowes. Check out his website. It's awesome. This project began accidentally and not as a project. Several years ago now, I was working on this story that I thought was a really cool, complicated short story. This is my third or fourth time trying it, and it didn't work again. And I was whining to my wife. I said, my story's broken. And she said, have you ever tried writing a children's poem? I said, not on purpose. But what are you implying? She said, I don't know. So I said, I took a few minutes. I wrote down a few what I thought were sort of Dr. Seuss kind of lines. And I said, what, like this? And she said, yeah, perfect. And I said, fine, okay. So what I thought was going to be maybe a 3-page weekend left-handed project turned into about 1,200 lines in 2 years and change. The story's about a black and white border collie and a redbone coonhound. And as I suspected, a lot of reviewers on Google Reads were disappointed when they thought they were getting a children's book that really isn't a children's book, though it started out that way. But the most amusing one to me was the reviewer who complained that while he or she didn't mind poets making up words, I did it too much. Except for 3 very small exceptions, I didn't make up any words. They're real words. I'm going to begin at the beginning and see how far we can get in my 20 minutes. Pardon me. Kirby the Sneak and Arlo the True live with the Burbles at House 42. And Arlo the True, Arlo Vanguard, watched over his everyday things in the yard, his fir tree and fuzzball, his wet bowl and bone, and Kismet the cat dog, who slept on a stone. And out in the yard by a uniform mound, his cherished, cool, dug-up down hole in the ground. He looked in his heart back when he was a pup and dug it a down hole instead of an up. He watched over everything just to be sure that his where-theys all were still there where they were. Brian's illustration. Now Kirby the Sneak, Kirby Manchu of 1,000 disguises, unbeaten at clue. Dogma cum laude from trickery you, kept a keen eye on said Arlo the True. At the edge of the yard, past the reach of the law, he drew on his draw pipe. He peered at his paw. He drummed with his nails. He rocked in his chair. He twisted his whiskers and stared into air. And from under the brim of his sneaky slant hat, he schemed on the bowl and the bone and the cat. What game could he play? What ruse could he do to bamboozle the scrupulous Arlo the True? He could flip the bowl over to look like a lid, so Arlo would wonder what was it hid. He could bury the bone by the Burbles' brook that sluices through shadows where sleuth hounds won't look. He could stuff the ball into a knot in the oak as phase one of a bigger, more practical joke that would take some straw, bungee cords, clipboard, a box, and some UPS Browns with the Baden-Powell socks. But Arlo the True had a super good nose that could sniff out the grade in your back-to-school clothes, or the adders of blue when the summer wind blows, or the red in a black and white sketch of a rose. And Kirby the Sneak knew the True would discover a bowl, ball, or bone under whatever cover. So Kirby the Sneak tapped the brim of his hat and took a hard look at Dame Kismet the cat, like go bark in her face, make her hiss, maybe scat, but there were a couple of problems with that. Kismet the cat, Kismet the wise, watched Kirby the Sneak through the slits in her eyes. That crepuscular hunter, that somnolent purr, that lightning strike wrapped up in quicksilver fur. She could hear a slug slide and the sneeze of a snail. She could make a cloud rain with the rings in her tail. She could leap off a lamppost and land on her feet and hear the small heart of a bumblebee beat. She could fly through the night on the back of a broom and see through pitch black in a windowless room, and foretell if a girl would say yes to a groom, or if sailors were heading for fair skies or doom. No, Felix Fantissimus, Kismet Meow, could not be snuck up upon no matter how. And for all his connivingness tables and charts, his French curves and bar graphs and tactical arts, his schematics and plumbods and contour maps of the quadrant, a transit, and spring-loaded traps, one other discouraging serious flaw in the plan which the Sneak almost instantly saw was that cat had a very sharp claw on the end of her paw. The sun had climbed high in the storybook sky. The rindle ran wet, the clouds were wrung dry. The dog-faced blonde butterfly silk-screened her skirt, and earthy worms toiled in the Burbles' dirt. The ants in East Antlia worked out a trade to carry raw crumbs via bucket brigade through the grasshopper's musical country estates with the mineral rights at near rock-bottom rates. The hummingbird flashing a ruby bandana from the New Year's blowout in Copacabana was zipping around like a sequined cigar on invisible wings, having made it this far. The golden-eyed sunflower shadowed the sun, and the wren was rehearsing an old-timey run. The frog in his wetsuit, with scissor-lift legs, was diving the reef in the creek-bottom dregs, with a laser-beam tongue and the ball-turret eyes of an air defense system for taking out flies. The roses were crimped into decorative knots, while at something like 12 aeronautical knots, the biplanish dragonfly buzz-bombed the top of the purple hibiscus with a Boss turbo prop. The better boy boasted, the early girl blushed, and the signature spider, unsquabished, unsquashed, had written an invite, RSVP, in her web to the moth and the fly and the bee. So Citizen Arlo pulled out his list and looked at the sundial he wore on his wrist and flipped through his daybook to certify they were about where they ought to be this time of day. The wet bowl and bone, the down-holing cat, the ants and the spider and the rest of all that. An Arlo brown dog rubbed the back of his neck and ticked off the items. Check, 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 check. He scratched his behind ear and yawned a big yawn and looked for a grassy green spot in the lawn. He circled around it, he squinted, he sniffed, then he flopped himself down at the end of his shift. But out in the garden the katydids trilled, the trilliums waved, and the woodpecker drilled. And Kirby the sneak stroked his long sneaky chin and blew a big bubble and soaked it all in. The air grew more still, the hummingbird stopped, the cat raised an eyebrow, the soap bubble popped, and that's when it came to him. Out of the blue, a novel new way to trick Arlo the True. He laughed in his dew-claw just thinking it through. He'd steal the downhole, then he'd bury it too. So sneakily, skirtingly, circumferentially, cunningly, Kirby slunk, nay, providentially, over the ground where the downhole and mound had been stuck in the sun and were lying around, a long-winded way of saying he crept, while Arlo was dreaming of cheese as he slept. He flashed the fourth wall a suave Thomas Crown grin, and then with his forepaws, he filled the hole in. But something out there seemed a little bit off. You could almost have made out the hummingbird cough. On the distant horizon, the earthworms homed in on a taut baby dust devil starting to spin. The walking stick's foot inexplicably broke through the dome of a dewdrop way up in the oak. The dragonfly sputtered, the ants hit a ditch, and the signature spider, for once, dropped a stitch. But Kirby the sneak didn't see all of that, or the look of concern of Dame Kismet the cat. No, he cut his eyes north and he peeked to the south, and then he ran off with the hole in his mouth. Now Mr. McCornchowder lived right next door to the Burbles' house in House 44. He worked in his sleeves with a white pompadour and overalls, blue, from the Barbary War. He grew cabbage and carrots, chayote and chard, in the fertilized plot in the back of his yard. He had a whole shed full of handcrafted hoes, custom-made rakes, and a watering hose to fill up the pond for his gold medal frogs. But he didn't like holes, and he didn't like dogs. And Kirby the sneak slunk up to the shed with the hoe that he stole and the hat on his head, and his back to the wall by the composting pit, and a digital 7-piece Spymaster kit of lockpicks, night goggles, invisible ink, and a grappling hook if he needed to slink up the side of a freighter. But never mind that. And never mind also that Kismet the cat, like a magical leprechaun cat in a poof, had materialized on the top of the roof and was drowsily watching as Mr. McC stood trimming the leaves of the pin cherry tree. Oh, who out there knows if it's fortune or fate? It later comes hard on the heels of late. Oh, who can distinguish because of from after? Or if it will engender disinterest or laughter? Not even the vigilant high-flying hawk could know something like that, or the Buddha-like rock, who can only see now and remember back then, and imagine how different things could have been. One thing about Kirby we do know was when. He dug out the hole, he dug out the dirt, and he dropped the hole in. When Kirby took off, all you saw was a tail, a blur in the wind, and a vapor-thin trail that streaked through the stuck-open gate with a swoosh, and sucked the stuck-open gate shut with a whoosh. And Mr. McCornchowder brandished his shears in a bow-legged polka with smoke in his ears. But Kirby was gone back to his lair, in the Burbles' yard where he pulled up a chair, a Dacron umbrella with fiberglass struts, iced table leg tea and pistachio nuts, to watch the hilarity sure to ensue when they noticed the undug smooth knot-hole in lieu of the bound hemispheric depression they knew is the hole in the yard in the land of the true. Arlo woke up from his castles of cheese, slow-footed mailmen, squirrels in the trees, and rolled down car windows to stick his head out of on rides to the country with bugs in his snout. But also the nagging dream vision he'd had of a black and white rascally phantasm clad in the shape of a dog, in a hat and tie that he saw with his extra telepathy eye. Although whether his gift was more gut intuition or some sexier, out-of-this-world premonition, like an incubus, astral projection, or wraith, is a matter for science, dietitians, and faith. Who was up to no good, Arlo saw right away. Too theatrically aimless, too blithe or blasé, too dramatic in stopping and sticking his nose too approvingly into the Queen of Scots rose, with his paws crossed behind him, glancing around, pretending to whistle, towing the ground, and that something was fishy and probably wrong, or it would be, or might could, before very long. He whipped out a scratch pad and went down the list of all of the items that couldn't be missed, while Kirby was giggling out of control when he came to the place where there wasn't a hole. He searched in East Antlia, dragged the dazed brook, and looked in the fir tree, and got the big book on exploring the rich life of holes, where he read about canyons, deep space, the occasional head, and historical baronial socks. But the hole that he needed, the one hole, the true hole, the soul lost at large hole to locate was, Arlo found fair to say, null, in absentia, gone, and not there. Heart Brian's picture. Kismet the cat had beamed up to the top of the high-tech umbrella where Kirby the fop took his tea in the shade with a tart piquant zest of new tennis shoe tongue to more savor the jest, with a red gingham tablecloth, slices of lime, and a handheld fan mister through Amazon Prime. As Arlo, undaunted, stepped up his patrol of the grounds in his wheretheys and the lost hole, while not once losing sight of or scent of the trail the sworn klepto took filching Burbles' mail, and whom Arlo drove off every day of the week with a menacing growl and a fearsome physique, except Sundays the perp was too yeller to show, and a win streak like 1 or 2,000 and oh. But the sun had begun to slide out of the sky. The brook that ran off to the sea had run dry. The earthy worm's sturts had turned hard as a rock, and the dragonfly's motor was starting to knock. The hummingbird noted that butterfly's gown seemed a little last season, a little run down. The antlian ants had abandoned their tasks and put on small ant-face-sized masquerade masks to challenge each other at mumbledy pegs, while the grasshoppers fiddled ride jigs on their legs. The bullfrog, worn out from his scuba emprise, was unwillingly resting his Fabergé eyes, and the signature spider, which just might be worse, had begun in her web under some kind of curse, a chaotic and homespun, untutored, untersed, but unvarnished true eclogue in doggerel verse. And Kirby the sneak even, Kirby the crook, knew not to put something like that in a book. But what could he do, with stuff all out of whack, when a voice like a cat dog said, "Get the hole back. Get the whole back, huh? Now there was the plan. If you needed a dog, well, the sneak was your man. So Kirby the Sneak reassembled his gear, one snow axe, two snorkels, a hollow point spear, a vanishing hand cream called You Disappear, one waterproof undersea eavesdropping ear, liquid spray smokescreen, bath begone pills, two portable oil slicks, fake dollar bills, an inflatable sandstorm, a ship-to-shore phone, a genuine black market CIA bone for stakeouts of henchmen and grifters and spies, a reversible peephole, one gaucho disguise, a hand-me-down astrolabe, stamps, odds and ends like the BSA guidebook to Bolins and Bens, two micro self choppers with touchscreen control, and a hole poacher bag for the hole that he stole. When he got to the gate, he could see he forgot that the stuck-open gate had swung shut as he shot out of Mr. McCornchowder's gardening plot, when he dropped off the hole in the land of the knot, regretting he didn't have videotape of his daring done, brave, and heroic escape. So Kirby, like Hannibal, paced up and down with a scroll of the plans in his fist and a frown over last week's round table meeting of Mensa's on the structural weak points and privacy fences. And this one was long, yay high, painted green, like something right out of a fence magazine. And that's when the cat said, remember the cat? Dig a down hole on this side and an up hole on that. Well, that's what the cat said, with a cat dog-like smirk, and Kirby the Sneak thought, by Jove, that might work. So he pulled up his pants fur and spit in his hands, and strapped on a headlamp with blue rubber bands, and checked the canary, and took a big swig of couch cushion Kool-Aid, and started to dig. He dug like he'd entered the treasure chest cup, all the way to the bottom, and then he dug up. At the top of the uphole, he got out the scope from the periscope outlet to scope out the slope of Mr. McCornchowder's No Kirby's land for a booby trap, tripwire, or big dog tree stand. The coast, as they say in the Coast Guard, was clear. So Kirby the Sneak hauled up all his gear and slipped on his no-footprint hole tracker mocks with an eye out for polar bears, cheetahs, and crocs, and sidled in silence alongside the side of the fence with the Audubon Hole Hunter's Guide and a three-legged stool and a prospector's pick and a three-legged stool and a prospector's pick and a Mercator map and a doodlebug stick. I think my time's up. I'll stop there. Kirby eventually gets the hole back at great peril to himself, but social order is restored. Later in the epilogue, it goes on to, it goes on to explore some of the history of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, bloodlines of champion border collies, Chaucer's The Nun's Priest's Tale, some critical comments on from Kirby on Diego Velázquez's painting The Spinners, the history of the Borderland Reavers, Mary Queen of Scots, the history of golf, the nature of time, and the prospect of time travel. These are all things that Kirby has researched or has been thinking of. I hope you'll check it out. Not for the poem, at least look for Brian's illustrations. Thank y'all for listening.